Is a woman allowed to dress up as a man on Purim? Before I respond, I would like to stress that a question of this sort, an issue which, as you will see soon, is the subject of debate amongst halachic authorities, must be addressed to your personal rabbi. That said, for information purposes, I will give you a little background information on the subject. As a general rule, dressing up in clothing exclusive to the opposite gender is definitely a problem. The Torah expressly forbids such behavior. A man's attire should not be on a woman, nor may a man wear a woman's garment. This prohibition is intended to prevent licentious behavior. The question remains, however, whether this prohibition applies to Purim, a day when any cross-dressing would only be for harmless entertainment purposes. The Rambam in the Code of Jewish Law mentions two opposite opinions on this question. One, there's no prohibition. Two, it is prohibited. He then says that the custom is to follow the first, more lenient opinion. The Mishnah Berurah by Rabbi Israel Meir Kagan cites several halachic authorities who recommend that the custom of Purim cross-dressing be abolished and prohibits this practice. So, again, according to this article in Chabad.org, the Mishnah Berurah prohibits it. Likewise, as far as I can see, the overwhelming preponderance of later rabbis who discuss this issue in their responsa is to prohibit the practice, citing other earlier authorities who call it wicked. But again, be sure to consult with your rabbi for any halachic decisions. Just as a reminder, the costume should be checked for shotness. There we go. We connect another one of our mitzvahs to it. Before they are worn on Purim, even if they are just rented. And also the laws of modesty upon Purim as well. Be certain that any costume you wear conforms to modest. So that's a .org one. Let's just see here.
Rabbi?
Yeah. 1 second. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, do women in Orthodox, do they ever wear pants?
So that is it end up being a sort of complex halachic question. If the pants are designed for women, so in other words, clothing that is designed for women, according to many authorities, should not be a violation of this. In other words, if they have pants that are uniquely designed for women, that should take care of this problem. The second problem is modesty. So the question would be, is it considered modest dress? So for instance, in Haredi schools, like for gym or for like things like athletics and Haredi girls' schools, you'll see schools where the girls will wear pants, but they'll wear a skirt like over their pants, like a short skirt over their pants. So they apparently have come to the conclusion that combination is modest, and there's not a prohibition of them wearing those pants because those pants are designed for girls. But you will not see in any Haredi schools. By Haredi, I mean like Hasidish or Yeshivish places, women just walking around with pants. In modern Orthodox families, you will sometimes see it, but it's very complex. It's mostly ends up being a modesty problem if the person is wearing pants that are designed for women. So let's say you have a pantsuit like Kamala Harris or Hillary Clinton or Sarah Palin or somebody like that's wearing a pantsuit. So it is a kind of halachically complex area, but it might very well conform halachic requirements, but you still wouldn't see it in any yeshivish or Hasidish community. Okay. Just want to see if there's any other. All right, let's look at outtorah.org. So this is Dr. Asher Meir. Please note that in the past years, Rabbi Meir's pre-Purim costume consisted of Purim Torah, lighthearted spoof in the Purim spirit. The following column, although on a Purim topic, is totally serious. One of the most prominent customs practiced today on Purim is to dress up in costumes. This custom is mentioned already in the Rishonim, which it means in the Middle Ages. The Rambam, who's living in around 1500, mentions that it is acceptable for men to dress up as women, although there are dissenting opinions, even though this seemingly violates the prohibition of a man's clothes shall not be on a woman, and a man shall not wear women's clothes. Others mention that it is customary to dress up as non-Jews, although this seemingly violates the prohibition of don't go in their ways, which we also saw. Here's one explanation of this custom. The prohibition is to be likened to non-Jew. The prohibition to be likened to non-Jews exists at several levels. In general, this prohibition, like other prohibitions, should not stand in the way of danger. And indeed, the Shulchan Aruch writes that a person may dress up like a non-Jew to avoid being identified as a Jew if Jews are being attacked. However, if there is a decree for Jews to dress like non-Jews in order to make us lose our distinctiveness, then we're forbidden to change our dress even in the face of danger. Likewise, entering a place of idolatrous worship is normally forbidden. However, it is permissible to escape danger, but is forbidden if the danger arises from a decree against Jewish worship. In other words, the degree of prohibition depends on the motivation of hostile non-Jews. If their objective is to make us give up our traditions, then we must resist at all costs. But if their enmity is irrespective of our customs, then we can be more lenient. I heard from a prominent Rav that in the time of the Holocaust, the rabbis were particularly lenient because the customs of the Nazis were not to make us give up our customs. On the contrary, they explicitly included in their mass killings people of Jewish background who did not identify themselves as Jews. At the time of Purim, the decree of Haman was directed against all Jews. It's true that the stated reason behind the decree was Haman's claim that we were a people who didn't keep the king's laws, but this was not Haman's true motivation. And in any case, the decree applies to all Jews. In this case, dressing up as a non-Jew would have been permissible. So the custom to dress up as non-Jews reminds us that this practice would have been permissible at the time of the original miracle due to the unique nature of Haman's decree. All right, this is a surprising piece of, I don't know why he's doing this. Another possible explanation is that the non-Jews at the time likened themselves to Jews, as the Megillah states, and many of the common people Judaized themselves. We commemorate and mock this insincere, purely external adherence to Judaism by adopting a purely external likeness to non-Jews while internally remaining fully devoted to our faith. So I don't know if that sounds like a very learned legal discussion or not. He is not focused on men dressing as women or women dressing as men. He's focused on another issue: men dressing up as Haman, or men dressing up as Achashverosh, or men or women dressing up as Harvona, or some kind of a Persian from those times, because there's a separate prohibition of dressing up like Gentiles. So he seems to be saying that since the it's clearly not, it's so clearly understood to be uniquely about Purim and lighthearted that it doesn't represent a violation of that rule. Now, that, and then he just lightly treats the other thing by saying that that the Ramah permits it, even though we saw that, according to the Chabad.org article, many do not, including the Mishnah Berurah and others. So let's just see here. Weddings on Purim, links. There is a custom or a custom. There are many explanations brought down for this. Many post-game are against cross-dressing on Purim as a costume. Just see here. Nope. Number 6. As a general rule, dressing up in clothing exclusive to the opposite gender is definitely a problem. The Torah expressly forbids such behavior. Mahari Mintz Tshuva writes that he saw many people dress as members of the opposite gender on Purim in the presence of leading Chachamim, and the Chachamim did not object. He justifies this custom that since one is only dressing up for Purim celebration and not to promote promiscuity, it could be permissible. The Mahari Mintz compares this practice to the custom he observed of allowing children to grab candies from each other on Purim, even though halacha clearly forbids taking other people's possessions, even in jest, and considers this outright theft. In the context of Purim, celebration is deemed permissible. Ramah 696.8 writes, based on the Mahari Mintz, that some are lenient with this, and the minhag is to be lenient. The reason is that the issur of cross-dressing is because it promotes znus, which is promiscuity. But since on Purim, it is done just for the pleasure itself. I mean, the joy itself, not the pleasure, the joy itself, fun, the issur does not apply. The Ramah additionally records a custom to allow wearing Purim clothes that contain shatnez if it's rabbinic shatnez. These enactments were waived for the purpose of the special joy of Purim. How do you like that? Taz Yerodea writes that his father-in-law, the Bach, disagreed with the Ramah and brought proof from the Uraim that one shouldn't do so for a wedding, includes that anybody who refrains will merit a blessing. Apparently, there were people who dressed up at weddings. I don't know what he's disagreeing about. Is it the shatnez or the other one? All right, Rambam and Rebbe Lezer of Metz quoted in response to Yechabadat, dressing as a member of the opposite gender is forbidden under all circumstances, even for Purim or for the joy of a bride and groom. Rav Chaim Kanievsky says, in the name of the Chazon Ish, quoted in Dirshu, Mishnah Berurah, etc., that cross-dressing on Purim is inappropriate even for children, by HaYehudi, etc. However, the Stipler and Rebbe Yoshev were lenient for young children until the age of chinuch, which means until you start educating them about the mitzvahs, which is quite young. It's quite young. Pri Megadim writes that if one is only wearing one woman's garment, but still clearly looks like a man, he may be lenient. This is quoted by the Mishnah Berurah. Nevertheless, Rav David Feinstein rules that wearing a woman's wig would constitute wearing, Simlas Isha, wearing a woman's clothes, and would be prohibited. Chacham Ovadia Yosef forbids any costume that involves cross-dressing on Purim, even for children. See also Halacha Yomit, Ramanasha Klein, etc. Aruch HaShulchan writes that although the Ramah justifies the custom doesn't exist anymore. Okay, so it does look here like sort of like the Chabad.org article. So, yeah, the ones who permit it are the most interesting, as it usually is the case, because they really have to justify their argument to permit something that otherwise seems to be forbidden.
Rabbi, what about the fact that Purim itself is afuch, is
right,
but
you don't
to turn over everything.
I know, but you don't eat not kosher on Purim. You don't eat. You don't. But it does seem like somebody could, like, if you're being lenient on stealing and on the cross dressing and on what was the other one that we had? Oh, shotness. If you're starting to be lenient on them, it looks like it's going in that direction, which I could see could become a matter of concern. Like, if you've already creating momentum, what else are you going to be lenient about? But I could imagine somebody bringing that up. But you see, I mean, if you have like the later poskim, including the Mishnah Brura, that those are heavyweights. They didn't bring up Moshe Feinstein on the issue. It'd be interesting to see what Moshe Feinstein says about it. But a lot of heavyweights were brought up, of more contemporary kind of halachic authorities.
Wonder what JV did.
Right. I was around Rav Aaron. Rav Aaron did not tolerate silliness on Purim.
Oh.
He would not. When we were in high school, it wasn't. I mean, I was young, anyways. I wouldn't have been allowed to drink. But even the base medrash guys, Rav Aaron would not allow anybody to get drunk and he held it was forbidden to get drunk because a Jew can never be in a position where they can't make proper decisions, and you're always in a potential halachic quandary. You never know when one's going to come up, and if you can't resolve it properly, you could be in trouble. So he held that it was forbidden to get drunk on Purim, and even Ramosha Shapiro didn't like he didn't like the silliness because he felt Purim was a very, very deep day. But we visited him on Purim, somewhat drunk, and he drank, but he didn't like it if we got out of control or silly. Because he felt it that it was still a serious time, in that there were so many deep aspects of Purim that needed to be explored. So on Purim night, he used to give like what you would call a mimer. Like, he'd give a deep talk on Purim night. We'd all gather in somebody's apartment, and he'd give like an hour and a half long deep talk on Purim. And if somebody was drunk, he did not like it. But on Purim day, we did visit him, somewhat drunk, but he didn't really tolerate the silliness.
I would think a little bit of wine and, a little bit, I would be great.
He also drank a little bit. He did drink because I remember one time we asked a halachic question, and he said he can't paskin because he had more than a revis of wine. A revis is like, I don't know, 3 to 5 ounces of wine. And so he did drink, but he didn't, I never saw him drunk that I can
According to all accounts, the Lubavitch Rebbe, he could hold his liquor.
No matter how much he drank, he could hold his liquor. That's what they say.
There are stories.
Yeah.
3 to 5 ounces, a lot of 3 to 5 ounces, not a lot of liquor.
I know, but the rule is that you're not allowed to render a halacha, a judgment, if you've had more than that. Yeah, because they didn't have blood alcohol levels at that time. So the halacha is, if you've had more than like 3 to 5 ounces of wine, and it was wine, not even booze.
That was strong wine.
Yeah, they did have strong wine. So he wouldn't, give the halachic decision because he had, he didn't say exactly how much he had. He had
Rabbi Fox?
No, I don't think so. Not if he had more than. I think it's pretty much an acceptable.
Usually, you would say all these type of questions go to Rabbi Fox, but you never say unless he's drinking.
Right. If I knew, that's true. That's true. I should check beforehand with Rabbi Fox to see if he's been drinking, because then it would be inappropriate.
You know how I feel about that.
Yeah, I know you do. I know you take it very seriously, Sam.
Wait 2 hours before you call him.
Yeah.
No,
there are all sorts of other questions about Purim. For instance, davening while drunk, DWD. Under, there's like levels of drunk, and there are levels of drunkenness where it's considered a deep disrespect of Hashem to be davening. You'll still see people end up doing it because mincha, that's the problem. Getting in a mincha, or for some people, Ma'ariv on Purim, because Purim day, you're supposed to have the meal, and then a lot of people get drunk at the meal. I get drunk at the meal. But then the question is, can you daven? So they're like, you'll see responsa where they'll sort of talk about different levels of drunk. There's drunk when you're buzzed, but there's drunk where you're silly. And drunk where you're silly is considered a disrespect to be davening in that state. There's also something called as drunk as lot. That's a level of drunk where you're essentially blacked out, like you have no memory of it. It's that deep drunkenness, and then the person has no memory.
Just from my own experience, when I'm around, there's people who are silly drunks, and then there's people who are mean drunks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I would say that the silly sounds like, they should be able to daven. I mean, they're just silly.
But you're standing in front of a king. That's the thing. You're standing in front of a king. That's the Amida is supposed to be like you're standing in front of a king, and here you are giggling and
better than mean, that's for sure.
I agree 100%. And by the way, mean drunk is not on those lists, but they have shikar kalot. The question is, are you responsible for damage caused if you're at that level of drunkenness? And so halachically, again, all practical halachic questions need to go to Rabbi Daniel Fox. But in theory, you would say, I shouldn't be responsible because I don't have intellect at that level. Impaired intellect is usually a reason not to be liable. But when it comes to drunkenness, you are considered liable because you're held responsible for the first drink or a couple drinks that got you into the state. When you decided to take those drinks, you were in a state of compos mentis, and therefore you are held responsible for damage caused even there. And I believe that it's parallel to the laws that you have in the United States about drunk driving, that you are held responsible because of the decision. Let's say you drive and cause damage driving, you're held responsible for the decision to drive. Now, again, what if you're so drunk when you take the keys that regularly in that state of intellect, you wouldn't be held responsible? But I believe they have the same reasoning, that the decision to get drunk makes you liable for bad decisions you make while drunk. So anyways, okay, so that's just a little bit about that, and it ends.
Right. And I definitely take back that it was a stupid question. 100%. Sorry.
Were you, Lois? Were you drinking when you said this?
Thank you, Sam. As should be. And by the way, wouldn't Vashti be a wonderful costume for women? Never mind. In certain instances. Oh, we had, what was that rabbi who came right after Stern but stayed? He used to dress up on Purim as a gorilla because he was going to read, Megillah gorilla. And
oh, nice.
I don't know. That would, I mean, I don't know if you're worried about lewdness and you dress up as certain animals, forget
also,
it.
by the way, there's another thing. There's a Hasidic, it's based on Kabbalah, but within the Hasidic world, and certainly within this is also true even in the yeshivish world, there is a taboo on exposing people, especially children, to images of non-kosher animals.
Right.
So what if somebody dressed up as a gorilla? Would that create a problem for people who are concerned about images? Because it extends not just to the animal, to the live animal, it extends even to images of the animal. Like when my kids were young, we did not use picture books that had pigs or other kinds of animals in it because of this taboo. So would that, I wonder if in a Hasidic environment, if somebody was dressed up as an animal, if they would have an issue with that.
Tell them, yeah, I'll call them. Okay,
here we go. All right, let's see if we can get one in here.
Things would be bad if you were drunk and let your oxen go ahead and gore somebody.
Yes, it would. It would. It would not.
Right.
In Wisconsin and certain other states, they have cow tipping. Now, there are many who question if this is mostly urban legend or whether it is really a phenomenon. But you have usually drunk people who try to knock over a cow. It's called cow tipping. And so apparently you're quite drunk and then you take a run at a cow and try to knock it over. I know that it is a conversation. There is discussion about whether it is mostly urban legend or not. But there are apparently people who developed heroic legends about their ability to knock over a cow while drunk.
Cow tipping.
Yes, cow tipping. Yes.
Right.
I thought the cow tipping was when you give the cow.
Yeah, if like after the cow gives you a ride, you just give it like a valet.
Or if he gives you some of his meat, you tip him.
Right. There is something called the tip of the sirloin, but I don't think this is at all related. Okay. He prohibited us from removing the hair of the temples. That is his may be exalted as saying, you shall not round off the corners of your head. This prohibition is so you will not resemble idol worshippers, since idolatrous priests would do this as they would only shave the hair of their temples. So they had to clarify in Tractate Yevamot and say rounding the whole head is called rounding. So that is not to be said that the point of the resemblance is the shaving of the temples and the leaving of the rest of their hair like the idolatrous priests do, whereas one shaves it all, there's no resemblance to them. So you might think that since they mean like cutting off the hair here and just leaving the hair on top, like Friar Tuck and those old Robin Hood things. Oh. So you might think that cutting off your payas, that the reason for it is because you're going to leave an area on here. But what if you shaved off just bald? You just shaved your head bald. So there is nothing left to look like a priest. The Gemara is saying it would still be forbidden. But the discussion itself makes it clear that this was at least part of the issue, which is that you should not look like an idolatrous priest. We will come back to this tomorrow when we get more into the nitty-gritty of what we now called payas, leaving the corners here, that corner, the corners here, and we'll discuss not only payas, but it seems like corners of the head, and it could involve also whether or not you're supposed to wear a beard. So we will look more at that tomorrow. I'm very grateful for getting a chance to learn with you guys and to explore these issues, which surprisingly did have a lot to do with the stuff we were learning. All right, be well.
Thank you, Rob.